brought to you by CuriosityStream, the world's first streaming service built for addressing our desire to learn, explore, and understand. You can check out my original video, Debater Theater, exclusively on the streaming service Nebula, get unlimited access to Nebula and CuriosityStream for just $2.99 a month, and get your first 31 days completely free when you sign up at curiositystream.com/SarahZ and use the promo code SarahZ. The relationships between creators and the people who consume their stuff has always been a bit fraught and a bit weird. From a girl trying to mail herself to the Beatles in the 60s to people fainting when they meet their celebrity crush, the way people both idolize and demonize creators, sometimes at the same time, has never been completely chill. But even more so now than in the past, when the online world has made it even easier for people to communicate with their idols, and when you have online personalities calling their subscribers their friends and family, the nature of these relationships is often weirder and much more confusing than ever. I think this is especially true for people who became well-known almost entirely off the internet because their fame is often directly dependent on their ability to effectively communicate with their followers. If your followers don't see you as a friend, that can literally hamper your ability to become successful, and as a result, things can get pretty weird. I'm making this video from the perspective, I guess, of an online personality. To clarify, I know I'm not famous. I've been recognized a couple times in public, but most people don't know who I am. And when people are recommending my channel to others, the word that gets most commonly used is underrated. So, I mean, there's that. At the same time, I still have the kind of jarring experience of existing to a lot of people outside my immediate social circle. I mean, generally speaking, for most people, you exist to the same people who exist to you. The people who know who you are, and discuss you tend to be people you know as well. This isn't universally the case, but unless you go viral in some way, you probably aren't going to have strangers paying close attention to who you are. That's good in some ways and bad in others. I mean, there are lots of ways your life is harder when you don't have a big platform. If I or one of my friends suddenly ended up in a really bad financial situation and I needed to share posts about it to get people's attention and help, I have no doubt that I would have an easier time getting support for myself and my friends than a lot of other people. On the other hand, there are a lot of positives associated with a situation where people you don't know generally don't care about your life. There's a freedom in knowing people will mind their own business about whatever you're doing as long as it's not hurting anyone. But for me, since I've started making videos and becoming more known to people, that isn't the case anymore. It's incredibly weird to, for example, go to my favorite debate meme page on Facebook and suddenly see people I've never heard of discussing me, or seeing people recommend my videos on Reddit and it leading to a discussion of people trying to work out what my political beliefs are, as if that's a thing that's really important to them, or a thing I'm secretive about that they need to Nancy Drew out of my videos. I mean, it's part of the gig when you sign up to make videos on YouTube, and to be clear, I love my job. I think it's awesome that I get to share phenomena that I find interesting or cool with an audience and have people react and learn something about it. But at the same time, being a public figure, albeit a very small one, still does impact how people treat you on a personal level, and that affects both creators themselves and the people watching them. For this video, I want to talk about how the popularity of online creators has changed the way we conceptualize boundaries in our interactions, for better or for worse. I want to share some of my own experiences, as well as some interesting case studies for other times this has happened. And I want to talk about why this is often the case and what we can do about it. So first of all, let's talk about the screeching hell of parasocial relationships. I touched on parasocial relationships a little bit in my video Double Standards in Diverse Media, where I basically say that we're more likely to turn on creators who feel more accessible to us. Part of the reason we see more call-out posts directed towards YouTubers than we see directed towards movie stars is because we usually feel that we have more close personal relationships with YouTubers. It feels like more of a betrayal when they disappoint us. You're more likely to get a response from them if you can contact them over social media, and many people feel like YouTubers are more beholden to their viewers specifically. If you aren't familiar with the term, a parasocial relationship is kind of a one-sided relationship where one party is investing a lot of emotional energy into the relationship and the other party isn't even aware that the first person exists. The term was coined in 1956 and at the time mostly referred to performers on television, but it didn't really take up mainstream usage online until recently. I first heard the term after the channel Streetchy Movies made a really excellent series called Fake Friends that talks about the various issues associated with these relationships. It's a great series and I'd recommend giving it a watch. Unfortunately, part 2 of the series is currently suffering a false copyright claim, so I'll link Shannon's Twitter if you want to help her get some support and raise YouTube's attention for that. Nowadays, while the term can still apply to mainstream celebrities like band members, it's particularly common to use it to refer to online personalities. And a lot of that is that there's a much bigger incentive for these personalities to appear down to earth and close to you. I mean, a lot of celebrities do base their image off the idea that they could potentially be your friend. Part of the whole appeal of boy bands is selling the fantasy that they could one day date you. But YouTubers and other online personalities are often encouraged not just to sell the idea that they could be your friend, but that they are your friend. Not all YouTubers do this, certainly, and you don't have to do this to be successful. But a lot of the most successful YouTubers do try to build up a feeling of personal connection with their audiences. Think about how many YouTubers talk about subscribing to them or clicking the bell to get notifications every time they upload as joining the family. Or ones who start their videos with "Hey friends" or "Hey sisters," or YouTubers who casually talk to the camera about their days or interesting stories using the same affect you'd use to talk to a close friend. And oftentimes when YouTubers don't do this, they're criticized for seeming too cold and distant or too inauthentic. For example, popular beauty YouTuber Zoella has often been criticized by people for seeming inauthentic or for seeming as though she doesn't personally care about her subscribers. In particular, a lot of fans were really upset after her releasing a book and not disclosing that she'd used a ghostwriter, as well as not seeming personable enough in meet and greets. I'm not going to comment on whether people are right to criticize this particular YouTuber because truthfully I don't watch her videos, but regardless, it's relevant that YouTubers' audiences in particular often prioritize them seeming authentic and seeming like they care for all their subscribers on a really deep personal level. On one hand, some of this is a sense of being owed that friendship. There's this idea that it's really shitty for you to seem distant to your fans because you would be nothing without them, which to be fair isn't wrong, but also isn't unique to YouTubers. The same could be said for musicians or movie stars or celebrity chefs. Anyone with any kind of platform is only as famous as their fans allow them to be, yet YouTubers and other online personalities in particular are really heavily expected to be friends with the people who watch them. On the whole, there's definitely a real incentive for YouTubers to be incredibly friendly to their viewers in a way that's not expected of popular personalities who don't come from the online realm. And there are quite a few consequences from this demand for authenticity that can be actively harmful. One of them is that, generally speaking, you aren't going to talk to a stranger in the same way that you talk to your friend. For example, sometimes my friends and I roast each other a bit. Sometimes my friends and I will joke about each other having bad taste or playfully call each other dummies. And I think this is common in a lot of friendships. To be fair, I think even in friendships, this can go too far sometimes. Sometimes people are too comfortable roasting their friends and end up saying hurtful things or prodding on their insecurities by accident as a result. I think as a whole, people should be more mindful that their friendships still involve being kind and supporting one another and not just being dicks to each other for fun. That being said, playful roasting is still a lot more okay when you're friends with someone than when you're talking to a complete stranger. And, well, when you think you're closer to someone than you actually are because you've spent hours watching their stuff and it feels like they're talking to you specifically, it's easy to misjudge how far that closeness actually goes. I've experienced this firsthand with people in my comments, both on YouTube and in my Twitter replies. I can tell they're genuinely trying to start a series of interactions here, but they're approaching me like you'd approach a close friend who's cool with you guys roasting each other, and I think not realizing that it comes off as painfully rude. This sort of playful overfamiliarity can take a lot of forms. One of them is jokingly using degrading terms that friends might playfully call each other without realizing that in the absence of that context, it simply comes off as rude. For example, I've had people call me a bitch online because they don't like the way I hold a tea mug. Is it possible that this person is just really defensive over tea and is being an asshole on purpose? Yeah, maybe. And sometimes I think some of these people are simply trying to use negging, a made-up pickup artist tactic that dictates if you're mean to someone at first, they'll be more eager to impress you in the future. Just a note, this does not actually work, and if you do this to a woman, the likelihood that the only recognition you're going to get is her screenshotting your message to laugh at with her friends is through the roof. I think some of those people are trying to neg me, which I find more funny than anything else because of how out of touch those people are. But I can't help but feel it's the case, at least in some of these interactions, that the people talking to me are genuinely trying to become my friend. And of course, divorced from this online parasocial idea of friendship, this is a completely insane thing to do. If you want to make friends with someone you meet at the library, you probably are not going to get off on the right foot by immediately telling them their choice of book is terrible and they should feel ashamed of themselves. That person is a stranger, and most folks feel enough shame interacting with strangers to avoid randomly insulting people in public as a friendship tactic. But the thing is, with these online interactions, internet personalities often don't feel like strangers anymore. If you've watched 40 hours of my content, it's very possible that I'm not really gonna feel like a stranger to you anymore. And given that I don't feel like a stranger to you and most offline interactions are roughly mutual regarding levels of contact, it's very easy to subconsciously think that you won't feel like a stranger to me either. So someone might send off, "Wow, you bitch, that's not how you hold a mug," thinking that's a joke with a close friend, and I sit here reading it thinking they sound like a huge asshole. It's easy to blame people for just having terrible social skills in these kinds of interactions, and sure, it definitely takes some level of social ineptitude not to realize those kinds of messages are inappropriate. But also, it doesn't come completely out of nowhere. The feeling that emerges from devoting a lot of time and energy to one particular creator can definitely feel like you have some degree of special relationship with them, more so than a lot of interactions in the offline sphere. This confused mesh of overfamiliarity and rudeness can definitely lead to a lot of uncomfortable and strained interactions, particularly when these boundaries aren't clearly communicated. I think given that, whether we like them or not, relationships of this nature are going to happen, more clear communication of boundaries is necessary to, if not prevent, at least curb stuff like this. But as irritating as playful overfamiliar rudeness is, it's not the only way these interactions with online personalities can take place. And another significant issue is a degree of entitlement over creators' personal lives. There's this YouTuber who I've watched quite a bit of named Brian David Gilbert, who sometimes makes absurdist, humorously edited music videos and these days talks about video games a lot on the channel Polygon. About a year ago, Brian decided to grow a mustache. Now, to most people, someone growing facial hair is not a big deal, and there's not a very big cast of characters in your life who would care very much. Maybe your partner might not like it, and a friend might snidely complain, but for the most part, what you choose to do with your own facial hair should be widely considered your own business. Not so with Brian David Gilbert. As it turns out, quite a few fans of his content were very, very unhappy with this. People were saying the mustache was awful, that he looked bad with it, that it didn't fit how he was supposed to look, and some people were even saying that he should shave it off. To be fair, some of that was just people joking, but for some fans, there was a genuine feeling of upset that Brian grew this mustache. Whether or not people intended it as a joke, you still had people messaging him on Twitter pretty much every day asking him to shave his mustache off. To be fair, this isn't something entirely unique to online personalities. Anyone with any degree of celebrity is going to have people publicly commenting on their appearance and being angry when they change anything about themselves, and the scale to which this happens is certainly going to be a lot bigger and worse for people like Hollywood A-listers. This is on a much larger scale when you have things like, for example, people ripping apart Britney Spears in 2007 for shaving her head, or people acting disappointed that Gerard Way is at a higher weight than when he was in his 20s and 30s. But something I think is worse with online personalities is that their perceived degree of connection to fans tends to be a lot closer. A famous pop star generally doesn't seem as obligated to reply to every fan tweet made about their appearance, and many of them don't even run their own social media. Being a non-internet celebrity is based on a lot of things, and perceived connection to their fans is generally not one of the biggest ones in most cases. You have massive pop stars like Christina Aguilera who never talk to fans, don't take pictures with fans, and are still extremely successful. As an online personality, you can't really do that to the same degree because your ability to navigate the online sphere is a critical factor to your success. For online creators, it's very difficult to not run your own social media and not communicate with people to some degree, which means if people are commenting on how you look and urging you to change something about yourself, it's difficult to avoid that. Which means a lot of those comments asking you to change how you look are more likely to reach you in a really direct way. This even happened to me once when I was making my first ever YouTube channel. I didn't have a ton of subscribers because the viewer base for someone whose channel was 13-year-old atheist who wants the entire internet to know she's a 13-year-old atheist is not particularly great, which thank God, honestly. But I remember I had about 1,000 subscribers at the time, and after making 6 or 7 videos for the channel, I got a haircut from about here to here, and I got bangs. And I so distinctly remember after putting out my first video after the haircut, I got like this 5-paragraph PM from this man, very helpfully telling me I shouldn't cut my hair because it was going to be bad for my brand recognition. And I was just sitting there like, sir, what do you want me to do with this information? I'm not now going to uncut my hair. The thing is, unless you're literally streaming your life completely unedited 24/7, viewers are by nature only going to see a small part of your life and they're never going to fully see your whole self. Which means, especially in the absence of two-way interaction, viewers don't know the full you. They know a carefully curated version of you. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't need to know the intimate details of my favorite YouTubers' therapy sessions to enjoy the videos they make or to feel like their content is meaningful to me. But it does also mean that in some cases, fans can get this very specific attachment not to the YouTubers themselves, but to the idea of those YouTubers. Fans get to know, for example, Brian David Gilbert not as a full person, but as a brand or an archetype. Again, not inherently a bad thing, but when that brand is then threatened by something like a change of appearance, a lot of fans get this feeling of almost betrayal at thinking they're losing something that's important to them. Some of it may just be aesthetic tastes. They don't like how the mustache looks and feel entitled to tell a creator they should change it. But I think it's also that a recognizable archetype that's been meaningful to them in the past is changing in some way. It, to me, feels almost like a fear of losing something that's important to them. A month or two after Brian David Gilbert got the mustache, he made a video about Dark Souls, and at the beginning, he included this little bit.
These are both fake. I know how much it would disappoint my friends if I changed my appearance. I'm just kidding again. I'm not your friend, and you have no say over what I do with my body.
A lot of fans were happy about this and saw it as an example of healthy boundary setting. But you also had people who seemed to have their feelings genuinely hurt by the fact that this guy had told them that he wasn't their friend. And that's so interesting to me that that can genuinely be a surprising and hurtful revelation to some people. That you can feel so connected to a person that even a reminder that you're not friends can be a hurtful and upsetting thing to hear. I think this comes from a lot of things. I think it in part absolutely comes from these parasocial relationships. That you feel close to someone to the extent that you feel a sense of betrayal when they change something about themselves and tell you they're not your friend. I mean, I wouldn't really have my feelings hurt if a cashier at Starbucks said we weren't friends. It would be a weird thing to say apropos of nothing, but it wouldn't be hurtful to me. But if someone I considered a friend said that to me, I would probably feel pretty bad. It feels to me like it's violating that sense of closeness. At the same time, I think there are some other sources too. One of them is this sort of feeling of entitlement to closeness with certain creators. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think a lot of online creators often hear sentiments like, you owe your fans this or you owe your fans that because you would be nothing without your fans. It isn't untrue that any creator's success is only dependent on the people who consume that creator's content and give them a platform. And I certainly don't think creators should be dicks to their fans. I think constantly deriding people who watch your videos or calling them stupid is just generally a pretty rude thing to do, and it's certainly not something I'd support. And of course, there are definitely instances of creators breaking promises to their fans, and I definitely don't support that either. I think there are certainly instances where you do owe your fans something, particularly in instances where you promise things to your fans. For example, if you promise your fans they can get free tickets to a convention in your name and the whole thing turns out to be a poorly managed mess, you definitely hold some culpability for deceiving people. Or if you use your platform to promote things that are irresponsible or harmful to your fans, like selling them fake diet products, that's a way you can be harmful to them. So when I talk about fans in some instances being entitled, please don't think I think creators never owe their viewers anything. But leveraging this relationship of I subscribe to you and you should therefore be grateful to me and not reinforce any personal boundaries as to my private life to ask creators to divulge a lot of personal information about themselves or be accessible at any minute or not to prioritize their own life and choices at any time is certainly a product of harmful entitlement. This definitely happens to a lot of actors in the Broadway world who become popular online, for example. So, for example, there's this YouTuber, Carrie Hope Fletcher, who became popular online for her song covers and vlogs, and who later became a popular musical theater actor as a result of her online platform. She starred in Heathers, Les Mis, and then The Addams Family, and that's owed largely to the popularity she found online. But this past October, she put out a video called Enough's Enough, where she talked about how she feels she's been pressured to overshare a lot about her life in the past thanks to her online platform, and how she often felt scared to put up greater boundaries for fear of disappointing her audience. In this video, Carrie talked about all the harmful impacts that that's had on her life. Among these harmful impacts have been feeling pressured to respond to every single piece of mail she got, being stalked by fans, and being scared to make any major change in her life in case her audience was unhappy with it. She concluded the video by emphasizing that while she still cared about her audience, they were ultimately strangers and she needed to put up greater boundaries in her life. For example, she told her audience that she's going to be moving to a new place soon and wouldn't be sharing a tour of the new house or showing people pictures of her new tattoos. Luckily, most of the comments were really supportive of this, and I think this is ultimately a really positive example of a creator setting up boundaries, even though it's sad that things had to get so far before that happened. I think ultimately it's a good idea to make that boundary really clear both on the creator side and on the audience side. I think it's fine to care about one another, and there are a lot of really great examples of really healthy creator-consumer relationships. I certainly don't think caring about YouTubers is an inherently bad thing. If I thought that, this certainly would not be how I choose to spend my time. But making it clear what exactly that relationship is and what the boundaries of that relationship are is really important for the sake of everyone involved. So, for example, it makes me happy when I listen to the Adventure Zone podcast and whoever is DMing at the time calls themselves my best friend. And it makes me happy when I watch YouTubers I like and they call being a subscriber being part of the family. But those people aren't actually my best friends, and I'm not actually in any kind of family with them, and I think it's incredibly important to remember that for both their sake and my own. I think this is particularly important when there are less than savory creators who will take advantage of a perceived close bond between creators and an audience to harm fans. There are sadly dozens of examples of popular streamers and YouTubers using their position and supposed closeness to their viewers to behave in really inappropriate and pressuring ways towards fans, and I think things like that are more likely to happen when you heavily push for this idea that you have an inherent close bond with every person who consumes your content. Again, I certainly don't think every YouTuber who calls themselves your friend is trying to do this, but I think creating the expectation that creators and consumers must see each other as close friends or family can set the stage for bad actors to take advantage of those expectations. There are situations where those expectations harm creators, and there are situations where those expectations harm fans. As someone who is both a creator and a fan of a lot of creators, I feel an obligation to be careful about my relationships either way. As a creator though, I feel like this sometimes puts me in kind of a tough position. On one hand, even as I've started to get more subscribers, I've always wanted to have a small community feel with the people who watch my stuff. I've always liked seeming accessible to people, which is why I have things like a Discord server where you can chat with me as a reward on my Patreon, and why I like to do polls on my Twitter so I can hear new and interesting perspectives on things. Not to mention, if I hadn't been in close contact with the people who watch my stuff, I wouldn't have met my current partner who just absolutely means the world to me. I've had a lot of positive experiences through being friendly to people, and I don't want to completely shut myself off to the people who watch my stuff. Not to mention, from a practical standpoint, it's so easy to seem like a cold sociopath who doesn't care about your audience, especially if you're a woman. I don't want people who watch my content to feel like I don't appreciate that they've chosen to stick around, because I genuinely do. I know some creators who have chosen to do that, especially creators with a much larger platform than I have, and I totally understand that, especially when it gets to a point that you have hundreds of emails and thousands of tweets directed towards you coming in every day, and there's no way you can realistically respond to them all. Like, I remember I used to read every single comment I ever got on my videos. I can't do that anymore, both because there's so many of them and because a lot of them are really rude and non-constructive ways. I don't really need to know that some random person from Wisconsin doesn't like how I part my hair. But for me, I think it would be a shame to shout out all the positive interactions I've had with people as a creator and say, that's it, I'm completely done engaging with people. But on the other hand, in this bizarre world of parasocial interactions, it's just increasingly harder to be friendly and accessible to everyone all the time. I remember when I had like 10,000 subscribers, if someone who followed me had started making YouTube videos for the first time and wanted feedback, I was always really excited to watch their stuff and give them specific feedback and detailed advice for what I liked and what I didn't. I can't do that now, just based on the fact that if I did, I would barely be doing anything else. But then you have this situation where not doing that is perceived as particularly rude, especially if you were willing to give other people feedback in the past. It's a lot harder to say, sorry, I can't watch this and give you detailed feedback when you've agreed to do that for other people in the past. It just comes off as rude or uncaring, even though it's often just a matter of time management and practicality. And it's also harder to give people shoutouts now because I have a much larger platform than I used to, and I have to be a lot more responsible with it. If I don't watch the full video someone sends me and I recommend it to others and there's a part I missed with some terrible ideas in it, I would then have played a role in amplifying those ideas, which I'm not comfortable with doing. Which means if I'm gonna give someone a shout out, I have to watch their stuff in full and be really careful, or else I might play a role in contributing to something harmful. So I probably can't give a shout out to someone who messages me with a 1-hour video and asks for one if I don't know them well. Of course, I still want to support channels that are smaller than mine. I wouldn't be anywhere now without the support of channels much, much bigger than me. But these days, it mostly has to be content I've discovered myself because there's no way I could ever have enough time in my day to watch all the stuff people send me. And again, I'm not trying to sound like some kind of celebrity here. I don't have that many subscribers in the grand scheme of things, and I can only imagine how much harder it is for people with more than me. Not to mention, obligatory as a woman here, if I make myself too accessible to people, I get a lot of creepy comments from people thinking I'm going to be their e-girl waifu. And I think it's in a lot of our nature to be uber polite to those people so as not to seem rude. Not to mention, there are some people who do not take rejection well and will get very angry at you if you don't give them the time of day. So I feel compelled to maintain a certain closeness with the people who watch my content, both because I've genuinely had a lot of really positive experiences I don't want to give up, and because there's a sort of fear or pressure not to disappoint people. When I watched that video with Carrie Hope Fletcher, even though she has a much larger platform than I do, I really related to a lot of what she was saying. So there's this tough question of what specific boundaries one should put up and how to balance connecting with your audience while making sure you're doing the right thing both for your mental health and your viewers' mental health. To be honest, it's definitely a balance I've struggled with myself, and I don't think there's one universal solution that fits every creator-viewer relationship. It depends on so many things, like how big of a platform you have, what the nature of your content is like, what kind of fan base you have, and all kinds of other really specific factors. And I'm certainly not going to sit here with my 150k subscribers and tell some YouTuber with 14 million followers how they should be managing their relationship with their fans. Like, I assume they know a lot better than I do how to handle that stuff, but there are a few things that, at least in my opinion, are really important to emphasize. So how can we start to do better? Creator-fan relationships can be really fun and really rewarding and can bring a lot of joy and meaning to people. At the same time, though, they can also be really messy because of how the online sphere conceptualizes friendship in some really confusing ways and because of some unmanaged expectations. Once again, the way to deal with this is going to vary based on the specifics of everyone's situation, but I think there are a few things that are just better for everyone across the board. I think acknowledging that you can care about your subscribers while at the same time understanding that they're ultimately strangers is really important. Me saying we're not friends to someone I've never met doesn't mean I hate them or that I don't appreciate their role in helping me. It just means we don't have a close and intimate personal relationship and that the interactions we have are necessarily going to be different because of that. And as an audience member, I think we should also be critical of seeing our relationship to creators as a friendship. For one thing, it's really easy to tie your identity to the things you consume, which can make it harder to criticize creators who do bad things if you see them as friends. Acknowledging that while their content and journey can still be meaningful to us, we don't really know these people can help us prevent problems like idolizing creators and not being able to see their faults. And on the flip side, it's also a lot healthier when it comes to managing expectations. It's not healthy to be horribly let down or betrayed when a creator chooses to make a personal life choice that you don't love. Seeing a creator as a perfect angel or your best friend is invariably going to set you up for a lot of disappointment when you're let down by them in some way, and that's not good for the creator or the fan. I also think whatever those boundaries are, it's a good idea to have them clearly stated. I mean, some things are obviously common sense, like please don't come to my house and try to climb my fence. But generally speaking, I think putting those boundaries clearly on the table can kind of help preemptively manage those expectations, both on the creator side and on the fan side. As a creator, this is definitely something I need to do better. I know I've definitely been socialized to be really polite all the time and not say no to people when they make requests politely because, that's rude. So more clearly saying, if you send me a video and ask for a shout out or feedback, I probably can't reply to that is something that I could be doing a lot better at. I also think it's just a matter of realizing that asserting boundaries isn't something that's inherently rude or inherently means you hate your audience. There's definitely rude ways to do it, which I don't condone, but just saying no is, I think, necessary and better for everyone. Whatever those boundaries are, I think when viewers know those boundaries, they're a lot more likely to be understanding and not try to cross them. At least the respectful ones are. There are always going to be assholes, but I also try to make not basing my entire channel off of catering to complete assholes an important principle as well. Speaking of total assholes, there's someone very loudly honking outside my apartment. And on the fan side, I think having clear boundaries for yourself is a good idea too. For example, oftentimes after a Broadway show, fans can go to the stage door and get autographs and say hi to the actors. There are some actors I know I will never stage door for because I know I would totally embarrass myself around them, which would just be awkward for both of us. On the whole, I think in this age where relationships between creators and fans are still being articulated and aren't always the clearest, being really specific and communicative about what exactly the nature of that relationship is and where it starts and ends is just incredibly important. There are definitely some basic principles of respect that probably don't need to be said, and there are going to be people who will take it upon themselves to be assholes no matter how well and how clearly those boundaries are articulated. But broadly speaking, being as clear as possible about consumer-creator relationships is more important than ever, and there's no shame in taking meaning in someone's content without personally being their best friend. That being said, this ice cream is definitely my best friend right now. So I love debate, and I've been doing it competitively throughout all of university and beforehand. And I think there's a lot of value in learning to do it, even though it's not a great way to determine correctness. I think learning how to recognize tricks in other people's arguments and learning how to assert yourself in a persuasive way is really important. That's why I made a video called Debater Theater, which you can only watch on the streaming service Nebula, where I talk about the basic building blocks of debate, but instead of doing it in a sad, boring lecture way, I basically point out where those tactics show up in a lot of popular media, like awards acceptance speeches and Toy Story. Nebula is basically a streaming platform that's a collaborative effort between me and creators like CGP Grey, Lindsay Ellis, Tierzoo, and a ton of other creators. One of the reasons you can only watch videos like Debater Theater on Nebula is because it's a great platform for a lot of stuff that would be demonetized or face false copyright strikes on YouTube. For example, history creators talking about war, or me using clips from various movies to make a persuasive point. I really love being able to make videos for Nebula, and if you sign up for it, you also get early access to my YouTube stuff. The best part is, with a subscription to CuriosityStream, you also get your subscription to Nebula included. CuriosityStream is a really great service filled with a ton of cool documentaries and educational videos that really ignite my desire to learn. You can get unlimited access for just $2.99 a month, and you can get your first 31 days of it completely free when you sign up at curiositystream.com/SarahZ and use the promo code SarahZ. I really hope some of you guys can check out Debater Theater and hopefully pick up on some cool tips about how to communicate really persuasively. And if you check out anything else really cool on Nebula or CuriosityStream, I would love to hear about it. So that's curiositystream.com/SarahZ with the promo code SarahZ. I'd like to thank all my patrons for sponsoring me. If you'd like another really awesome way to support me and you like cool mugs and stickers, I have a merch store up on the Standard website where you can get your own Respect Women Juice mug. I'm also selling these fantastic stickers and these enamel pins, and they're just the best. I love them a lot. You can even put a sticker on the Respect Women Juice mug if you want. Not sure if you can stick the pin in there, but it is great for tote bags and the like. If you want to check them out, the link's in my description. Thank you so much, and see you soon.